Welcome to episode 2 on this platform. When we ended last time, I told you that my daughter, who was 39, passed unexpectedly. And I gave you an assignment if you wanted to assume it. And that was when something in this world happened, whether it was small or large, you took a moment to notice it, which is what A Course in Miracles, non-duality, and any kind of conscious lifestyle would ask that you do. Use your awareness to notice it. So that's why it's not spiritual bypassing. And what I was asking you to do would be to notice it as a constriction, notice it as an upset, but not label it. So in episode 1, I told you my daughter passed unexpectedly, and I woke up in the middle of suffering to realize that in this millisecond, I wasn't suffering. If I went to past, I went back to suffering. If I went to future, I went to suffering. And even if it started the thinking, feeling with sweet memories, it always ended with this idea that Melissa was no longer here. So this experience of her passing unexpectedly opened up my world to applying what I had learned in non-duality and what I had learned in A Course in Miracles. And my goal, my life passion, is to share my experience and my learning with each of you who might be interested, so that you would be able to apply it in your lives. So what did I learn? What does that mean that I wasn't suffering in this millisecond? Well, let's do another kind of meditation and then see how that can apply to your life. And if we can replicate some of my experience with your experience. So let's take that self that we consider to be us and place it once again inside our heads. Sometimes we identify with our thoughts. That means we punish ourselves because of guilt or shame. And the same goes with our feelings. And both of these areas are temporary experiences that come and go. You feel good, you feel bad, you feel in between. But can this be the real you? Something knows of this experience. And what is that something that is aware? So let's again start with something that bothered you today. As I did in the first episode, this has now become my tradition to start with something that upset you. Give it a number, 0 to 10. It could be small upset, or it could be a large upset. Give it a number and place it inside your head. Now let's just for a moment back up just a little bit and notice that there's a local awareness. Some might call it the critic, some might call it the judge, some might call it the witness. But when it's close to the perceived self, it has opinions. It's like, there you go again, attacking your brother. There you go again, believing you're a person. There you go again, thinking you're better than other people. There you go again, believing yourself, Or it might be the opposite. It might be, wow, look at me, I'm improving. Wow, look at me, I'm making progress. Wow, look at me, I didn't eat that piece of cake, or didn't take that drug, or didn't smoke a cigarette, or didn't buy that extra thing that I was tempted to buy. All of these kinds of observations, whether they're positive or negative, belong to the localized witness, the localized awareness. That would be awareness with a small a. The non-dual talks a lot about awareness with a capital A. And that capital A awareness is something else. So let's go to that. Let's go beyond that local awareness that believes it is a person, identifies with the body. Let's go beyond, further back to the witness of the witness, the awareness that is aware of the judging, and awareness that is aware of the evaluator. Let's go behind that. And that is not inside the body. That is somehow in a consciousness, a bigger mind, like the Course speaks of it, a knowing awareness. There is something that knows that we are alive. And let's go outside the body and experience the space in the room. And let's go up and let's go down and let's go sideways. Besides noticing that we usually see a room in terms of the walls or the objects in the room. But let's now inhabit the air in the room. And now let's push out from the air in the room to push out into the air outside. And let's move into the air outside and join with the weather. Whatever the weather is, and whether your eyes are open or shut, we can join with the weather. And when we join with the weather, there's no opinion. If there's an opinion on the weather, you've moved back inside the body. I want you to notice the difference between opinions and no opinions. We tend to think of nothingness as nothing, inconsequential, and we give a lot of credence to the busy thinking of the mind, or the busyness of emotions which come and go. Feelings come and go, we can hardly track them unless we add paragraphs. Did you know that feelings and thoughts last only 90 seconds? Unless we add paragraphs to them. You might think that you have continuous pain in the body, but you can only sense it and take it in for 90 seconds. And then there's the next 90 seconds, which could be different, unless we think, oh, I always have pain. So now let's go back outside in the atmosphere. We've moved out and out and out. And now I would have you notice that there are no edges between the outside, the space in your room, and the space of your body. You know this knower that has no opinion. This knowing, there is a knowing even without the thinking, we know still that we're alive. We know still that we're in presence. We know that we're in stillness. That is consciousness. And we go there all the time when we daydream, before we go to sleep at night. We know we're not asleep yet, and we're not awake. And we give no credence, no importance to this space. But this nothingness is everything. And it's what changed my life. I'll tell you more about that later. But we may have had it all in reverse. This might be everything. And the body might just be a localization of life, like a flower or a tree. And they don't all look the same. Plants don't look like each other. They may be of the same species. Just like the wave might look different from another wave, but they're all part of the ocean. So right now, notice once again the nothingness that could be everything. This nothingness that could be called the quantum field, that could be called consciousness, that could be called God, that could be called life or the life force. It can be called the infinite. It could be called unlimited intelligence. It could be called the power. What if this is what you are, rather than the self that you think you made? Even the Course in Miracles agrees with quantum physics. In Lesson 93, it says, the self you made does not exist at all. And anything it seems to do and think means nothing. And it says it's neither bad nor good. It's unreal and nothing more than that. I love that. What if this is you? What if you are just a bundle of shared being? When we're attached to our accomplishments and our doings, either bad or good, or even if we're attached to our mistakes, mistakes are nothing in this world. They're all part of consciousness. They're all part of your localization of a shared being. I love lesson 189 because it fits entirely with the non-dual, which changed my life when I realized that this nothingness was everything. And from being a psychotherapist, I became a oneness coach. And my profound interest is to finding the bridges that bring us back from a belief in a separate self to this oneness, this consciousness that we all experienced. So while you're still in this state, I would like to read to you a little part of lesson 189, 7, paragraph 7. Simply do this. Be still and lay aside all thoughts of what you are and what God is, all concepts you have learned about the world, all images you hold about yourself. Empty your mind of everything it thinks is either true or false, or good or bad, of every thought it judges worthy, and all the ideas of which it is ashamed. Hold on to nothing. Do not bring with you one thought the past has taught, nor one belief you have ever learned before from anything. Forget this world, forget this course, and come with holy, empty hands onto love. Of course, says God. But if you're not a person who feels comfortable with that word, you can substitute life. You can substitute any other words that we used, the quantum field. Come into this moment with holy, empty arms. And if you would join me with soft eyes, coming back into the room, wherever you are, and notice how you felt about that small upset or big upset. And notice if there's any difference. I don't recall if I asked you to quantify it, but if I did, give it another number now. We can come back and live from this place, just as your car drives without you knowing it sometimes. We are available to live our lives from this meditative space without the thoughts and feelings. The non-dual often says, you are this meditative space. And what's meant by that is, can you imagine if your being is what that is when you have that place of in between the inhalation and the exhalation, where nothing is going on? That's the real you. The non-dual calls that the direct experience. A Course in Miracles has many layers. It's called the progressive experience because it starts with that belief that we are that separate self. I know the line that got to me from a course when I first read, and I think it's lesson 93, that you think people would recoil if they saw the real you, but that's not you. And Dr. Bob Rosenthal talks about when the course was written, we didn't yet have the psychology of shame, it wasn't in our language, but that is what we would define as shame, that unworthiness feeling where who you are is not good enough, and guilt is about what you've done. Course in Miracles speaks of both in the sense that it speaks of the fear and love. And I would suggest something new today. What if you thought about love as freedom? Because we have so many stories about the word love, being unloved, how we've been treated, are we loved enough? And we try to separate the agape love from this personal love. But if we're not the personal self, then what we're really looking for, if we go back to that meditation place, is the freedom of what we are. And if you go to your own experience, It's only thoughts and feelings that bring you back into the opposite of freedom, which would be fear or shame and suffering. So I leave you today with the possibility that you can have a direct experience in this millisecond if you drop the labels and the stories. And so my first experience with coming close to that, what would we call it? We would call it a pointer, that not labeling meant freedom. When I realized that I was all right in that nothingness of suffering, being absent after my daughter passed, when I came to that meditative state that I brought you to, I didn't do anything to get there. I was shaken. But then I realized that this is something to hold on to in the sense that it's a teaching. And so what I noticed, which was shocking, because I'd been around when Elizabeth Kubler-Ross taught the stages of grief, and we had so much gratitude to her for all of her teaching about death and dying. But stages of grief were never meant to be prescriptive. And I woke up to realizing that the stages of grief closed me off from life. And if I didn't label a sensation like tears in the eyes, they were just tears, water flowing, without the story of anger, depression, bargaining. They moved through my body, and I was available to the love that was expressed all over life toward me, toward Melissa, but I took in that impersonal love. And the love still existed between Melissa and I. Was it personal love? No, that's what we're waking up to. It's personal if I perceive it that way. But I consider myself the lucky one to be taught by her from the infinite what the bigger agape love is all about. And it's a freedom. It doesn't hold on to a body. Last night I had a dream, and she was very alive in the dream. And so I pointed to my husband in the dream. I said, "You see her? You see her here?" And she said, "No, he doesn't see her." So I gave thanks once again for my widened perspective. And I offer it to you too, because it's available to each of us once we're willing to consider what quantum physics and neuropsychology has never found, and that's the personal self. It is not observable in the brain. There are neuroscientists that are still looking, and bless them. But you and I can more and more find the portals between the old hypnotic belief that we're a separate self to this place of transformation where we know we're everything and all power. And so I leave you with that today, my friends. Thank you for joining me. Bye-bye.